Welcome to the Casey Hubble Show. Today I wanted to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my past, near and dear to my career before I retired, and that's college and the college experience. What are we seeing on America's campuses today? We're seeing on a lot of America's premier campuses, we're seeing chaos. We're seeing tragedy unfold. We're seeing Jewish students afraid to go to school. In the United States, we're seeing Jewish students afraid to go to school. The last time we saw that was when African Americans were afraid to go to school in the Deep South. And when that happened, Eisenhower sent in the army. President Eisenhower sent in the army. Now, there's calls for Columbia University to allow the National Guard in. And so far, Columbia has resisted that. I don't know how I feel about the National Guard being deployed to a college campus and how effective that will be. Visions of Kent State pop up in my mind, but I doubt that the National Guard would be sent to Columbia University with a full load of ammunition. But there's one thing I think we're overlooking on what's going on America's campuses, and that's the issue of foreign students. No, I'm not xenophobic. And I think there's some benefit to have foreign students on our campuses because it gives students a perspective with that friend sitting next to them that they might not otherwise get. But I also think it's important that we be careful. We be careful with who we're granting student visas to. The student visa, the F1 visa, the family member F2 visa that goes along with that. Hundreds of thousands of these are being granted. Last year alone, we granted 446,000 student visas. And why? Well, we want our colleges to do well. And I think part of it is the foreign students are making up for the gap that American students are leaving because they're not going to college like they used to. They're not going to the traditional college like they used to. And why? The reason for that is it's too expensive. But for a foreign student, in many cases, their education is paid for by their government that sends them here to get an education. It was interesting to me when I started looking at this. Last year alone, 102,000 student visas were given to Chinese students from communist China. And that's by far the largest number of any group from any country. But they're keeping especially our elite colleges, they're keeping them alive with this infusion of cash from these countries, especially China. I pulled some other numbers, and these are countries where anti-Semitism is the norm in many cases. Saudi Arabia, 9,276 in 2022 alone. Pakistan, 6,042 in 2022. Kuwait and Jordan, 4,800 in 2022. Compared to Israel's 2,200 student visas. And I imagine that's going to drop sharply because they don't want to come here in this type of atmosphere. But it's definitely, it's a money-making proposition for our universities. And that's why you see the university presidents don't want to condemn, don't want to come out and make these statements that we're hoping they make. Like, this isn't the way things are on this campus, this won't be allowed on this campus. They need that infusion of foreign money. In the state that I live in, it's such a racket bringing foreign students in, that Mexican students, for instance, in my state, pay in-state tuition. And I've always thought, how indicative of the money racket this is. No more so than this. Because you've got a student, say, from Guadalajara, who's going to pay less tuition than a student from, say, Oklahoma City. How is that right? How is that fair or equitable? Where a foreign student, in this case, in Texas, is going to pay less than a U.S. citizen from New Mexico or Oklahoma. It's because our colleges and universities here want to attract those students to fill in the gaps that American students are leaving. So when you've got all these students in those classrooms where anti-Semitism is the norm, you're going to see what you're seeing now. You're going to see these demonstrations that you see now. When this is not the Vietnam War. This is hatred of Jews that we're seeing manifested on our campuses. And I don't know if the American people realize how horrific that is, that some of our college campuses right now can be compared to similar situations in Nazi Germany. And the fact that our college campuses value money, which these students are cash payers, versus our students who have to beg and plead for loans and grants and hope for a scholarship. These students are cash payers. But to be able to say that our college campuses and the things that are being said to Jewish students is eerily similar to Nazi Germany, to me is heartbreaking, soul-crushing stuff, and it has to stop. The way to stop it is to reevaluate who's getting F1 visas. I want to thank you for tuning in today, and I will see you in the next one where we'll talk about this some more. Thank you very much.
I detect a little communism. I can see it in the